here in the snug, going to do that impossible job of trying to predict what's going to happen in the 8 months ahead. Joined by super agent Craig Harrison, master coach John Kear. We're going to decide what is going to happen in the 2014 Super League before a ball is kicked. I think that probably the easiest way to do it to start with is say, who do we think are the genuine contenders that would say finish in a top 6? Who might be those middle table clubs? And if we are going to get some form of promotion relegation, who are the teams most at risk that may be dropping out of Super League at the end of this season? So if we start with the middle of the table clubs, there's something that you said about it's going to be an exciting season this season because a lot is unknown before we kick off. I think our top 6 won't be that different. I think maybe 3 or 4 or possibly 5 of them will be the same. But I think it's this middle of the table where you're going to see some great improvers. You're also going to be some teams that will disappoint a little bit. Actually, there'll be some excitement suddenly in the middle of the table.
There will, and one of the things that's going to make it exciting is for 2 teams, they're going to be playing in a lower league next year. And you know that seems to be a fact that's coming. Whatever the restructuring is ultimately, it looks like it's going to be a 12-team Super League for 2015, and that means 2 teams really are going to come out of this division. And as soon as that happens, you've got a reason to come top. You've a reason to come within the top 8 for playoff places. You've a reason to get into the top 8, and my word, you've a reason to avoid the bottom 2. So I think every game this coming season is going to have something riding on it, and that's why I think it's going to be so exciting. We've talked about all the individuals at different clubs, but I think that very fact is going to make sure that every game is going to matter, and there's going to be none of these 44, 32 games where it's like tick and pass. Every game will matter.
So we've got 6 teams, 2 of which will be pushing towards the playoffs, maybe 4 of which will be towards the bottom of the league, looking at that trap door. Of those 6, who's the first one that you've got in your list?
This is to get relegated.
Well, it's to be in that middle, not to get relegated.
I'll make it easy. I'm going to throw the two Hull clubs in.
Right.
I don't think they'll make the top 6, but I don't think they'll be in the bottom 2. So I think Hull KR. Reasons. Hull. Every year we do the same thing. We want to watch, we want to get excited. We think this is it. I like Bradford. I think he's quite a character, and I think he's been there, and he's earned the right to. But it's an hard job for a young man like him to go in there with, I don't know, his Paul Cook, wherever it is, to run a machine like Hull. I've noticed, John will tell somebody better than this, but it's quite a. When I go to watch Hull and I go to watch Leeds Field, you can see the pressure, you can feel it. It's running into car park. I don't know whether Adam Pearson's got enough investment in what I've seen of the squad to get in that top 6. So that's why I'm going for them. Hull KR, same again. Dobson gone, enough for me. I think he's carried them on his shoulders, and that's not, and I think losing him, it'll be too much of a task for anybody to try and fill in. So that's why I'm going for them too.
I mean, Hull got to a cup final. Adam Pearson was quite vociferous about it wasn't good enough last season, particularly the way they faltered towards the end in the playoffs. Do you go with Craig that they're actually going to perhaps finish where they were, or is there going to be improvement in Hull?
I'm with Craig, to tell you the truth, and I think last year they were either very good or they were very poor, and they need to hit some consistent middle ground. They really do. You need to scale the heights for certain games as well, but when you're that bit off colour, you can't dip as low as they probably did last year. So they'll need a bit more consistency to challenge there. And it is going to be tough for them. It's going to be tough for Lee. I mean, he's a smart cookie, is Lee, and he's always been going to become a head coach, but it's very early in his career to become one, and it's a heck of a big club. It is a goldfish bowl there, I'll tell you. They'll tell you how many times you swum round it before you know yourself. So yeah, there's some pressure there. Hull Kingston Rovers, the Dobson fact, I think that's quite astute. So they'd be looking, I would think, if they're in the top 8, they'll be happy and bang on.
So Travis Burns, Chris Keating are going to be 6 and 7 if the squad numbers are anything to go by. Is that a good enough halfback combination to take care of what Michael Dobson did?
Well, we'll soon find out. I mean, Travis Burns had some great days, didn't he? And he had some ordinary days as well. but it's the Keating replacing Dobson that's the big one, because you know, when Michael Dobson said jump, all the other players didn't say do it, they said how high, and that's the type of person that you need to run that club, and he was absolutely massive for them on the field. So Chris Keating's got some heck of big boots to fill in.
Just going back to Hull, how much do you reckon they rely on somebody like Danny Houghton? And if, say, and we wouldn't wish it on any player getting injured, but if they were to have to be without him for a period of time, would they be able to cope with something like that, do you think?
Well, I think so, because I think that young Cunningham is the next big thing. I think he's fantastic. I watched him for the England. I thought he was fantastic. I think he just needs a chance. Seemingly played against Doncaster the other day. They played and he was fantastic. Got the man of the match. So I don't think it's that. I just think the whole pressure of being at Hull and what the expectations is sometimes has a negative effect. And I think for a young coach and a young squad to go in there, I didn't think Gaz Ellis played well last year, whatever reasons. I thought he was fantastic at Leeds. Obviously his reputation, he has to come to the table. You know, let's be honest about it. He has to come and do more than he did last year. He was their marquee signing. For whatever reasons, he didn't. We all watched it live. Gareth Ellis has to go and show everybody why they brought him back and do it, and not live off what's happened before. Players like Gareth Ellis, and you mentioned JP. I sit with JP, we have a boot room on a Tuesday thingy. They've always getting little reasons to why they need to perform. Well, he'll have all the negative remarks and say, right, here we go. And let's hope he does it. But I just think that the whole thing for Hull and Kear will be another disappointing year, I'm afraid to say.
That's one person not going to East Yorkshire. In terms of Catalan, do we think that they're in that bracket as well? That
yes.
They finished sort of limped into the playoffs, if we were being fair. Didn't perform very well. Seemed to have lost a fair bit of their flair towards the end of last season. Are they in this group, do you think?
I think so, yes. I really do. But when you look at the 25, it's a strong squad. It really is. And all the 25 players within their official 25-man squad have got extensive Super League experience. So you'd think personnel-wise they should be thereabouts in the top 6. But they lost the mojo last year, no doubt about it last year. And I agree with you, they limped over the line at the very end. They weren't that good in the playoffs, so perhaps they underachieved. If their squad play to the potential, they've certainly got top 6 written on it, but they've got to play to the potential week in, week out.
They've also got the factor of the World Cup. They've produced a lot of players for France who their season was extended by a couple of months because of that.
And that's one of the reasons I've had them outside the top 6, because I think it's bound to have an adverse effect upon them in the fullness of the season.
They've lost a talismanic player in Remy Castille as well. Fantastic that he's gone to the NRL, great for the French game.
Well, that Menzies wasn't bad either, was he?
He could play a
so, you know,
but is Jeff Lima an adequate replacement?
Well, he certainly was good at Wigan. He's certainly got a great pedigree in the NRL. But if you were going to ask me, honestly, if I'd have Remy Castille or Jeff Lima, I'd plump for Remy Castille. So, you know, he's got some work to do as Lima to fill those big shoes again. We keep talking about big shoes that have gone, but they're big shoes he's got to fill it as the man who leads that forward pack, that aggressive, tough French forward pack as well.
You mentioned players who come to the party. Does Leon Price need to come to the party for Catalan this year, do you think?
I think when you from a player's point of view, when they get a bit of interest off Catalans, you've got to look at them twice. One, they get it suntan lotion ready in flip-flops and Speedos, which is true, and 2 is the thinking of the career which should come first. I think the partnership of Leon and Thomas Boss together, Thomas Boss was my probably favourite player 3 years ago. When it came to the games I watched, I thought they were fantastic. He's nowhere near the same player. In fact, he was talked about in high respect by the lads, by his thingies. I think Leon and Bosk, with that combination, need to improve about 50-60% to take them round the pitch. But I don't know if that can happen. This is again my opinion. I don't know whether that can happen for next year. I think sometimes the players that they bring in, there's usually 3 or 4 in, 3 or 4 out. I don't know if that's the bit I see. I don't see that. Henderson, I think, is a workhorse, and he plays a lot of minutes and he's aggressive, and he's probably the grubbiest player I get mentioned of the lads. They'll always say, God, I hate him. He's an absolute.
Well, Pellicier's going to take that mantle.
Yeah, well, he's pretty good at that, isn't he? But I think the imponderable is Scott Giroux. Because
That's what I was
we
gonna say, yeah.
speak about the
Absolutely.
French players in the World Cup, but they had a season without him, and the year before he was exceptional.
Yeah.
So if he comes back to some form, there might be a top 6 team. But I agree with Craig. I don't think Leon's found his place yet. I really don't, because he scored, I think he scored 3, 4, 5 tries last year. Well, that must be the worst return that Leon's had throughout his Super League career. So I don't think they've sat at ease yet at the minute. So if they get Leon Price dovetailed in, if Giroud plays well, if Webb stays fit, if the World Cup doesn't have that effect, there might be a top 6 team. But all those things have got to come together.
So middle table team for you as well?
Yeah. And another, just a quick one. There were too many ifs in John's thing to know that they haven't got a chance. No, I hope so. I hope so, because I have a fondness for it. I think we need them in the game.
You just like the trips to France.
Correct.
On the subject of Castleford then, do we see them in this same sort of bracket, that we don't think they're going to be relegated, perhaps not yet ready to hit the top 8?
Well, we've got ifs again. We love these ifs, don't we? And it's a Rangi chase, it's an if, isn't it? If they can replace how they play, and it's more efficient than it was last year, they could be looking to sneak into the top 8. If they don't, if the halfbacks don't quite work, they could be looking the other way as well.
I was going to say, what about the fact that they've got one of the best strike players in Super League, if they can keep him on the field, a guy who turned a lot of heads last year, Justin Carney? How are they going to get the ball to him without Rangi, do you think?
Well, I think you've mentioned strike. I think there's also a guy called Luke Dawn who we have a laugh. If you watch Luke Dawn over the last 8, you can't tackle a breakfast, but he's in good ball. I'll always remember Luke Gale at London saying the best player he'd ever played being good ball. Well, Dawn, he said he just knows the runs, the angles to come on. The strikes there, again, Daryl's actually, probably somebody will know the answers, because I know how hard he works, I know how tenacious he is. And he'll replicate his personality onto that team, which will be a very hard working, in your face. He'll bring it. I don't think he'll fancy going to Castle on a Friday night. I think that's what he'll bring back. I think he'll bring back that type of atmosphere. I think they'll survive relegation. I don't think they'll push him for the top 6, because, as John's just said, I don't think the quality at the pivotal positions is high enough for them to do that.
Mentioned talisman as well. They're bringing one back.
Well, let's go back though to Luke Dawn. I think he'll play fullback. I really do. I think he'll be the man sweeping around the back, and I think he'll be the man picking up the centres and wings. So we're talking about who's going to fill Rangi Chase's spot. We're all number 6 Dawn on the squad sheet. I think number 6 will be named in the full back position. I really do, because that may well address some of his defensive deficiencies. But also what it does is give him that free rein with his offensive ability. So that may well be one of them, and that's why it's another if that we've got there. And I'll tell you, if Luke Dawn's sweeping wide out, Carney'll get the ball, and if he gets the ball, he's a handful.
And just back to that point about Andy Lynch,
Yep.
it's character really that you want in the dressing room when you're evolving a team, and he would be the ideal character to bring home.
Yeah, Andy Lynch is a top man. He's a top rugby league player. He's a top man as well, and you want people like that within your squad. He's a man that Daryl Powell will trust implicitly. Believe you me, he'll speak to Andy Lynch about lots and lots of things, about on-field stuff, about off-field stuff. And I think Andy Lynch. We spoke about Adrian Morley at Salford having this influence in the changing room. He'll have a massive one in Castleford's changing room as well.
So if we look at Castleford, are Wakefield very similar in their makeup of their squad, the fact that it's coming together a bit late, that they've had to make some changes, that maybe even they've gone for some players that they haven't got? It's going to take a little bit of a while, no matter what Richard Agar does, to blend them together. But because of that, they're going to be one of these middle-ranking teams as well.
Right, I'm bordering on the bottom 2 and shakily, and that one because what happened the other day. I think Richard's been put in an hard job. Sometimes when you don't know what's going on and you get your recruitment, you have to get it right. Wakefield, if they do stay up this year, my opinion is overachieved. He's done very well. I think what's going off with the squad, what I'm watching about the youngs coming through, he's going to have a hell of a job on there to stay out of that bottom 2. If you watch the way they play, and we all watch this in Super League, when they're getting good ball, it's fantastic. Last year, you really like watching Wakey play when they get in that thing. It's the other way, where I think they have to get it right, and I just think that might be the Achilles heel. I want them to stay in because I do like the way they play. I like the brand of rugby they play. I watched the Warrington game last year when they took Warrington all the way, and the lines they were hitting, the beautiful rugby they play, but you've got to be able to stop them and all, and I think that'll be a problem.
I mean, over the last 2 years, we've seen both sides of Wakefield. They had that run of 8 games that took them into the playoffs and very nearly caused an upset, and then they couldn't quite make the playoffs last year. Which Wakefield do you think we'll get in 2014?
Well, again, we're on the ifs, aren't we? And the ifs is Tim Smith. Tim Smith was sensational for 2 years at Wakefield, and if you looked at how Wakefield created tries, who was the last person who passed the ball or kicked the ball, and you'd say 4 times out of 5 it had Tim Smith's name on it. So he's the big one there, and this Peter Godin here really has got big shoes to fill again at a different club, and that's the imponderable. I'm quite at ease with Paul McShane at 9. Obviously Sykes has played 6, Mathers at 1. They were there last year, but that's the imponderable there, and he's got to be performing really well for Wakefield to be a possibility of the top 8. I think Wakefield will be happy should they avoid the bottom 2, and it will be a fair achievement should they do that.
Kyler Moore, massive for me.
Yeah, definitely
massive,
is.
big minus for Wakey.
Yeah.
I think he'll be big for St Helens. I think he grew and grew and grew. We all wanted the next championship player to play. Went to Leeds, all a bit too much for him mentally wise. Found himself last year outstanding. Big loss, big loss.
Yeah, his work rate was phenomenal, you know, and it is a big loss. You bang on there, because it wasn't just the amount of carries he did, the amount of it was good quality as well, and the amount of minutes that he played, and that's going to be big shoes to fill again. And this is why it's so exciting, because we genuinely we can all have our we can have our pub discussions, but the true meaning will only come out once the ball's kicked in early February.
In terms of 2 clubs, again, who have had the most disruption, and we mentioned Wakefield have had some issues, but Bradford obviously and London, the 2 clubs that are starting behind the 8 ball. Bradford, are they capable of staying out of the bottom 2? Do their fans need them to be in the top 8? Will the truth lie somewhere in between?
I don't think they'll get in the top 8. I think you have to be realistic about that. So what the achievement then will be avoiding that bottom 2 spot. But the big hope that Bradford's got is when they had similar adverse circumstances, all the players came together, all the coaching staff came together, and they overachieved basically. They were they'd have got, when Wakefield got in the top 8, they'd have got in the top 8 had they not had that points deduction. Yeah. So I think they need that spirit, and if Francis Cummins can engender that spirit, they have a chance of it. But they are one of the teams who'll be looking and thinking that's a fair old cliff that we might fall off.
Do you think they're at risk?
I'm opposite. I'm pushing them up there. I speak to him a lot. I trust Francis. I think he's a fantastic coach. I don't think they've been affected as much as what people think, from what I hear, other than the paycheck not coming through on a Friday morning. That usually causes a day of ruction. I like what they did last year. I think they can build on that. I think they've got young players who can get better. And as I said before to you, I think there's Adam O'Brien this year. I'll have a very big year. I've always rated Adam. He just needed a chance.
Danny had a fantastic.
Danny had his thing is, and I said before, I once asked Francis in his list of who when they were going to come pick the players off. I said to Franny, which ones are going first? And the one he said to me, he didn't want them to come for Luke Gale, which a couple of clubs did. He will be pivot. He will be. I'm absolutely sure. I've known him since he's been 16, and I think everything's right this year for him to push through. If he has a big year, he can put the balls where he said about Tim Smith. He'll put it on a sixpence for him. He just needs that bit of go forward, which I think he can. He's now old enough to actually bully that situation. Sometimes when you're a young lad at half-back, you're not going to point all over because you don't feel that you've got enough to say to somebody, hey, you, get. I think he'll do it this year. He's vice-captain as well, and I think he'll do it.
Part of the problem is managing fans' expectations, which, quite rightly, we should all be expecting our team to be the best they can be. Bradford reinvented themselves the time before last by holding on to people like John Bateman and Elliot Whitehead. That Bradfordness, if you like, has now gone. Do you think the fans will still buy into the fact that Francis is buying some players like Jamie Foster, giving them a second chance, like Lee Gaskill? The fact that actually this is where the spirit comes from.
Yeah, and I mean, Foster was really good last year, no doubt about that. You know, I mean, I think it was disappointed how he ended his time at St Helens, but he was very, very good last year. And Gaskell's always had that potential. And we speak about Luke Gale; he's a very, very good halfback, but Gaskell's got the potential to be that as well. And Gaskell's got a great kicking game; he really has. So they might play a different style of rugby. We don't know, but that's up to the coach coaching staff there to do that. But they've certainly got the possibility of being up there and so on. But it's going to be very, very difficult. And I like your confidence, but there's some good opposition as well.
Well,
so
they lost Bateman and Whitehead, but they've actually got 2 players there. They've got Oliver Roberts, and they've got another guy who played for England. They've got actually young lads coming through who are fantastic. I think they'll shock a couple. I think they're a good team to shock.
But it's young lads, Craig. It's not doing it for the odd game or the odd 3 or 4 games. It's the consistency.
Well, if you look at the size of the pack as well, John, you've got some big units here, and I think if he can play, they can get Disco to play so many games. They get Adam to go and convince people that he's there. Elliot Kear were fantastic last year.
He was.
And he's always been a player who people don't. He come as an early kid, they're rolling off the tongue, then they forgot about him. I can remember what a lot of the lads in training were saying, that this kid's work rate and this kid's thing is fantastic. I think
he was good for Wales as well, wasn't he? I think he was one of the few successes actually within the Wales campaign.
It's hard for us to judge London, so we'll gloss over them for the moment because we actually can't say at this stage exactly who is going to be in their squad. But I think we'd all say it's going to be very difficult for them
it's going to be difficult.
They've started so late.
Yeah.
But can they get that spirit going?
Well, let's not gloss over it. I mean, Sean Long, when he was at Salford, in a Salford team that, shall we say, was indifferent, and that might be well be being kind
very
to
polite.
them. Yeah, they were indifferent, but they played some great attacking rugby league. You know, and I think he's got a bit of some ass, Sean, on the coaching side. And I think he could be their key sign. We talk about key player signs. I think he could be their key signing. And if he does manage to get London into the top 12 of the Super League, avoid them bottom 2, my word, it's been a great piece of business by Tony Ray.
And somebody like Alex Foster, who I know you know very well, could well grow up by being in that environment. Could be the best thing that happened to him.
I met London on Wednesday. If they get near some of the words when I asked the question, as you do as an agent, who are these lads going to be playing with, if they get near to some of them was what I heard, they'll not be in the bottom 2 in my opinion. He mentioned Sean Long. That mix with Tony Ray will be brilliant. Tony Ray will be able to and he'll be able to get on that field and do what he does. I actually think London will not be in the bottom 2. I'm sticking my head on the block. I think they'll shock a couple and they'll just be above the bottom 2. But I absolutely think they'll play some good rugby and they'll be a lot better off than last year.